Oh yeah, we have to do something about these billionaires and their wealth. We have to bring the money that has been taken away and gathered and hoarded back to the system. Otherwise, there is no fucking magical solution to fix this system.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, immigrants. Oh no, we're gonna cut the tax on workers. Like, that it's not gonna solve the problem. It's gonna just create more gap in the budget or debt of the government. Because debt of the government is the debt that kind of people have. When the system is in debt, you're in debt.
Sure.
And these fucking billionaires just gathering the money until some party or some politician or some type of movement addressing the issue and do something about it. We're going to have this bullshit. We cannot have billionaires. Like, let's fucking unite on that so they don't fucking run to another tax paradise or whatever. It's a crime. It should be a fucking crime.
Yeah. It's parasitism, isn't it? Being parasites sucking our energy big time in the form of money. But okay, I'm going to be devil's advocate here now, dude.
So how are we doing?
That's a really good question. How are we doing? Pretty good, actually. It's early autumn now, but it's still like midsummer, so I'm pretty happy.
Yeah. It's just strange because it got cold and now it's summer hot again.
Absolutely. I'll be jumping in the lake when I go home this evening. You can be sure.
We don't have a lake here
Well,
to jump on.
we could jump in the shower.
Yeah, I did.
They're a lot more practical.
Yes.
How are you doing?
I'm doing all right. I have a lot of thoughts that I want to express.
I can see them actually kind of coming out of your head like this.
Are they?
So let's get on with it.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, cool.
Yeah, it's going to be good. I know that.
I noticed that we mostly cover like fringe ideas and topics here in this channel, but that doesn't mean like we don't care about like or we don't recognize what is happening in the real world. And
Real, huh?
yeah, I hate to see how we are being played and manipulated to believe that to buy these narratives that are dominating immigrants. Oh, they're gonna change our culture.
Don't forget, we're both immigrants, in case you forgot.
Yeah, I guess everybody at some point were an immigrant.
Yes.
Like, there is no native to anywhere.
No.
It's like they migrated from somewhere.
Yeah.
It started from someplace.
And getting back to Fringe, we're all visitors on this planet anyway.
And yeah, we're all stardust. So,
Yes.
Yeah. We're immigrants on this planet.
Yes.
And we have this resistance towards like immigrants coming from another part of the land. Because it's one land, separated even. It's still one planet. It's still
Absolutely.
one land. It's the dumbest idea, but the way that they talk about it, all different culture, different religions, man, the Western countries are white and Christian. And anything else is a cultural war if they bloom and grow and like have a voice or like have a saying in things, or like it should be the dominant culture, Christian and white. And
Yes.
I don't necessarily disagree with like, yeah, every country wants to have like a cultural things going on. Like, I don't know, you want to have your traditions going on, you want to, I don't know, have your way of living, but to have it as a dominance.
That brings up something not so nice, isn't it? The idea of of separation. I'm really big on this. Anything that creates separation on any level is not the way we need to go. Anything that brings unification, that's what we need. I mean, culture's wonderful. I don't think any culture's any better or worse than any other one. They're all valuable to the people that have them. But when we get into one culture dominating another, then we get into a political sphere, don't we? And I know that's the thing that you've been talking to me about before we started. It's a lot to do with how the political world presents arguments to us or facts to us.
Yeah,
Right.
we're gonna get to it along the way. But what I wanna set the general thing that is going on.
Yeah, the theme for our discussion.
I think, first of all, nowadays it's like we've finished a cycle,
Yes.
because now racism is trending again. It's not racism anymore.
Oh,
It's not racist to say like, no, we want to have a white society, or it's not racist to like, oh fuck these immigrants, we have to kick them out. It's not. It doesn't have the same repercussion as it had like 5 years ago,
okay.
and it's because of all these right wings, radical
Yeah. Mm.
influencers, media anchors, or whatever. They normalize it. It's like, if we have a point,
Mm.
these are the problems.
Hmm.
And somehow they got into the minds of even young people.
Mm.
I mean, most of young people are, liberals. They're like, they're very left things leaning minds. But to see that even slightly changing,
Yeah.
then it's like, it's alarming.
When you think about it, here in Europe, roughly the last 20 years, that has been more and more the case, that the far right extreme parties creeping in, even here in Sweden. But there are many, many countries of Europe that are in a similar situation. With what's her name in France, Le Pen, or I know Germany has its own version, and I better not name all the ones because I'll get one of them wrong. But a lot of the bigger countries, even of EU, have this experience that you were saying. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a wave that
A
goes
wave.
around the
Yeah.
whole Europe and Western countries.
Yeah, definitely. I suspect not just here either, but other parts of the planet too.
Yeah, probably.
I know there's an element of that in my home country, New Zealand too.
New Zealand, Australia.
Yes, yeah.
And it's weird
Why?
because
No, not why is it weird. Why does it happen?
no, it's easy. It's easy. Like when you being told a narrative and you bought it and vote for it and it didn't work, then you just jump into the next narrative. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And then you go, as stupid as it sounds, and it's as radical and wrong as it is, both morally and even in terms of being factual, as wrong as it can be, you're like, yeah, fuck it, let's try this one.
Yeah.
Let's buy to this narrative and see how is that going to work.
Well, that's really how the Nazi Party came to power in the 30s, wasn't it? That Germany was in a pretty bad state after the First World War and hadn't really recovered that well. I don't know what they offered. My history's not that good, I'm afraid, but they bought the narrative, whatever it was, didn't they? Big time. Mind you, I suspect that at the beginning of the Nazi Party's time, that they probably didn't seem so extreme as to when things progressed later in the 30s. And maybe that's true with other current groups too.
The thing that is so cynical about it is that all these narratives are going around to hide the fact that there are billionaires that take away money and food from your mouth.
Can you give me an example of one?
Example of a billionaire?
No, of the narratives that we are fed to cover this.
Like the problems are the immigrants, like we should solve the immigration problem, then everything will be fine.
Yeah.
They take the jobs
Yeah.
and they live on social welfare. And I'm joking this part,
Yeah.
not serious, but this is the narrative. Like, okay, yeah, they fucking our culture, they take our jobs, they take social welfare, they do this, they're the big danger. We're gonna have Sharia law in UK if we keep having the same amount immigrants coming to our country. And they do it so well and so organized that even though they don't have big following each one of them, but there are a lot of them.
Okay.
There's a lot of them that those small numbers add up to make the narrative the dominant narrative.
Okay.
And that's what we're dealing with.
Maybe they're right. Maybe you and I are really horrible people and suck the system dry. Oh. But we just didn't notice.
Yeah.
I'm being facetious, sorry.
I know, but what is...
So what you're saying is that we collectively are being told a lie to distract us from something else that's going on.
Yes.
Okay. So can you think back to a time when this was not the case? Have we had a time in history when politicians were honest and direct? And it's not a loaded question. I don't know, but I imagine that possibly not, but maybe you know something I don't.
I think there are models in our current time. There are models of government that are working better, not flawless, of course.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good answer.
And it's not necessarily needs to be like, okay, it's perfect, it's utopia or whatever. We're not going to achieve that within a year or 2 or 10 years or whatever. It takes time. But we can create a system that, move towards that utopian world that everybody lives in peace, everybody have food, shelter, and those are basic human rights.
So how can we tell who's telling the relative truth? I don't think there's an absolute truth, but how can we tell which political party, say, for example, here in Sweden, I'm really useless in politics, and that's maybe an advantage right now. But how can we say, okay, these guys are lying more than these guys? Do you have an idea for that?
No, I don't follow that. I don't want to have that approach towards it.
All right.
I don't want to have like, which one is better? No, that's enough with that. No, but the left party is better. But Kamala Harris has had some good ideas. At least he was better than Trump. It's like, no, fuck that. Fuck Kamala Harris and fuck Trump. With all due respect. Let's forget about left and right.
All right.
Like get your head straight. Forget about all this conditioning and bullshit and propaganda and whatever. Whatever happened in the last administration, whatever is happening in this administration, it doesn't take away the fact that billionaires are gathering the wealth and assets, and we middle class and the lower class getting poorer and poorer. That's the fact, and that's the direction that is going.
Absolutely. To me, that's we know that because we live it.
I trust the politician that comes out and say that and have
good answer.
some type of plan about it.
Yes.
Like, okay, that's how we're going to do it. That's how we're going to start. That's how we're going to implement this plan. And that's how much they need to pay, like more on their wealth. And
Good.
what we're going to do with that money, how we're going to infrastructure the better society for middle class and the lower class.
Okay.
So we don't have a lower class.
Yeah.
Because it's like there is no problem on the top. The bottom needs to be fixed. We have to raise the bottom. And how can we do that? By getting from the top. You know what I mean? It's like it's so simple, and they try to make it so complicated, and like, oh no, but what are we gonna do with all these people that live on social welfare, and they don't want to contribute to the society? They're just a burden on the society. It's like, what the fuck are you talking about? How many of them? How many? I can show you. The stats doesn't lie. Like here, for example, in Sweden, we have 2.5% people living on welfare.
On social welfare, yeah.
Yeah. And we calculated roughly it's like 250,000 people. And half of these, like 125,000 of them, lost their job within the last year. So before it was like 1.2%.
Yes.
So you're telling me Sweden, with all the fucking tax money that they get and everything, they don't have the budget to pay social welfare to this amount of people. You can fit them in 2 stadium.
Yes.
All of them.
But, Marty, what you're describing to me, I mean...
No, what, let me finish my point.
Oh, all right, finish.
It's not about these bullshit things that you hear, and it's being presented to you as an unsolvable problem.
Yeah, I realize that.
It's not like that. When you get to the bottom of it, you're like, oh no, this is like sound like a lot like a bullshit. Like sound like making some excuses for hiding something that is actually affecting our economy. And what are they hiding? Take a guess.
Yeah, that the country is dominated by a few wealthy families.
There you have it.
Yes. And now I bring up my point, because it's about that. What you're describing as how you think it should be, that is essentially what socialism is. I know Americans have a totally different picture of what socialism, but they're wrong. Forget that. But the idea is that we all pay a reasonably high tax so that everyone is looked after. And when I hear you saying that, and I know I totally agree with you what's happening here in Sweden, because I'm experiencing that too. It's really tough to get by. So the socialistic ideal has been polluted, it's the wrong word, but it's near enough. It's corrupted, that's the word, obviously.
I think it's not necessarily paying higher tax rate or whatever. That's not we need to, because it's happening in Sweden, but people who are really affecting the budget of governments are not paying their fair share. They're hiding their wealth. They buy stocks and say like, I don't have it. This is it's not real money.
Yeah.
And they don't pay wealth. They don't pay wealth tax. So
that's what I'm saying. The system's been corrupted.
No, but the way you present it, I don't want to create confusion for people. Is thinking like, oh, I have to pay more taxes to be able to have a better society.
We can't pay more.
I barely can afford living right now. That's not the goal. The goal is to tax the wealthy 1% on their wealth. So actually, we have to do opposite. We have to lower the tax for the middle class, working people, and lower class. I hate to fucking say class and middle and lower, because it shouldn't be a acceptable concept. I don't know how we end up here that it's like, lower, poor. It's like, it's 2025. We're not peasant anymore. It's not 1500.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But still, we use the same term, and there are same group of people.
Well, it's gone back to it, hasn't it? it's crept back in, the old serf and
I think he
lord
never
system.
gets out of it. He got a little better by
I
time.
think Sweden got better than any other country that I know about. Maybe not now, but from the 30s onwards, it was an amazing change.
Yeah, but now they shift.
Yeah.
They
That's what I'm
shifted
saying. It's been
everything
corrupted.
to go back to like, okay, I'm gonna give you a scenario that is gonna end up with.
Okay.
We're gonna have trillionaires.
Might already have. We never know.
Yeah, but we're gonna have trillionaires owning the planet. Forget about countries.
I'm sure we already do.
We're gonna have like I don't know, 100 trillionaires that owning the planet.
But dude, that's nothing new. I think that's already existing. Maybe not entirely, not completely, but I mean, we know that already. Look at the Bezoses and the Musks and the Rothschilds, and on it goes. I mean, that's already there.
At this point, we have a saying. You know, they don't have their own army and shit yet.
That we know of.
Yeah, exactly. So what I'm trying to tell you...
What I meant with that is they probably control a lot of the existing armies, you know.
Yeah, but it's still, you have human being, you can unite. But they are trying to create like some type of cyborg army that is undieable, and it's not, there is no way to fight back.
So, the thing is, what do we do? I'm in entire agreement with what you say.
Paint the picture first. We're going to get to it, because
right.
I want to like give this idea, put these thoughts in people's mind, whoever listen to us, to like have a perspective. It's like, okay, even if you have it all right now, like you have a comfortable living, whatever, even if you're not fulfilled with your job or career or whatever, but you're still like, okay, I have enough to live right now, and it's gonna get worse. It's gonna get to the point that you're not gonna be able to afford living this little comfortable life that you create for yourself. So you should be, I don't want to fearmonger, or like, it's the point of being aware. Like, your kid's not going to be able to own any assets. Your grandchildren wouldn't be able to like have a normal life, because this is the direction that it goes. And it's almost like they try to hide it, that it's going to that direction. And they try to like distract you with like, oh, immigrants, oh, cultural war, oh, this, that. And they try to like, put fuel in that narrative, and let's go stronger, push, Tucker Carlson, get on your show and push this narrative. Who's this other guy? Fucking, I don't know how he can keep a straight face. Piers Morgan. It's like acting like, oh no, I'm not right, I'm not left. It's like, shut the fuck up, dude. You're a fucking puppet. And I hate it. They don't come out and say it like it is. There's one person that is doing it, and one person that I know of is Gary Stevenson.
Okay.
And I say one person that I know of with a big following. Everybody. There are plenty of people that talk about this unfair fight the billionaires or whatever. But Gary Stevenson is the one that is millionaire himself, but he talks about like, the way that our society goes. We're gonna have like we're gonna go back to the time that it was peasants and royals. We see it right now. It's like these people who are in 1% living like luxurious life, and we are like, we cannot afford to pay our bills.
Yeah,
we're living it.
Yeah,
we're living a version of that right now, but It's gonna get worse if we don't stand up for ourselves, if we don't fucking realize we're being played and manipulated and we're being conditioned to believe like, oh no, we should have billionaires because I'm gonna be a billionaire one day. These people didn't have any money. Elon Musk didn't have any money.
Yes, he did.
And I know, but that's the narrative.
Yeah.
Like so many people don't know. His father fucking got rich in apartheid South Africa, doing horrible shit, and then moved to Canada.
That's right. Yeah.
They don't know They don't know the history. They don't know the background. They just hear like a sanitized version of the story, and they're like, okay, then I can be someone for myself. So no, I want to have this system going on the same way, so I have a chance to become a billionaire.
Everything you're describing, to me, is the remnants of the old world, which needs to fall apart at this point and make way for something quite the opposite to what you were describing we should have. And to me, I mean, I entirely agree with what you're saying. We need to get out and say, oi, enough. But to me, the system's crashing big time anyway. So I feel strongly it's just a question of time before the system shoots itself completely in the foot, and will hopefully then make way for something more constructive, more fair, as we had before.
Yeah. Do you want to take a look at the video that Gary Stevenson
Yeah, let's
put
do
out
that. Yeah.
lately?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's very telling. It's very informing.
I would like to suggest to our followers to look at this video in its entirety after our thing here too, because I feel that really gives or backs up what we're talking about and vice versa.
Yeah, I'm gonna leave the link in the description.
Yeah.
Check him out. And watch all his videos. It's like he explains things in a very simple way, not fancy terms and shit. And it's like that was the thing I was looking for. Someone explain to me what is happening in the economy, what is happening in this world, banking. Where do they get the money? Do they have the money? Do they have the credit? How do they create money? And you can get all your questions answered there. The perfect source.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's have a look at some of it.
So here.
You ready? Yep. Okay, today we are going to talk about the refugee protest.
By the way, I love his setup. Like he sits in his kitchen.
Yeah.
Have some dirty dishes in the sink. It's like, we're not here for, huff and puff. I'm going to give it to you straight.
Yep.
What it is.
Sure. I agree. Cookie in front of him.
Okay, today's video is called Refugee Riots, Salience and Storytelling. And what I want to do today is look at the recent growth in refugee asylum seeker protests here in the UK. And I want to use it to explain some really important terms and concepts about media, and in particular, economics and political media. We're going to talk about salience, storytelling, wedge issues, and the bifurcated society, and you're going to understand how the media works. Okay, so first, a little bit of context for our international viewers. In the last month or two, there have been lots and lots of protests outside hotels, which are being used by the government to house asylum seekers. Asylum seekers have come, they have not been processed, and they're being put up in hotels, and it has led to lots and lots of protests all over the country by British people saying they're not happy with asylum seekers being kept in hotels. Okay, so for a long time, I avoided speaking about immigration on the channel because I am an economist and I like to focus on the economy and things which I'm an expert on. But we started to see a couple of years ago, like the growth in people talking about immigration in the comments, basically saying, what you're talking about, the problem is not rich people, the problem is not inequality, the problem is immigration, why don't you talk about that? And we saw the popularity of this grow and grow and grow, and it started to become increasingly clear that basically anti-immigration sentiment was becoming basically the key opposition to ideas about taxing the rich. So I did a video.
Wonder how that narrative got so, how do you say, trending and viral.
Well, that's
who was behind it, who was supporting it, funding on it.
Of course. I mean, it must have some political background to it, political energy
They're
behind it.
puppets.
Yes.
Who's behind them?
Yeah, well, yeah. Who?
Billionaires.
Yeah, of course.
A couple of years ago, my first video on immigration, which we'll link here so you can see. And really, by and large, I haven't touched it so much since, but I wanted to do a video on it now because I think it's again become really relevant to our work on dealing with the problem with the economy, dealing with the problem on inequality. And I think what we've seen is, I came back from holiday about 2 months ago now, 2.5 months ago. And at the time, it really felt like we kind of had our foot on the neck of the media, basically. Everybody was talking about wealth taxes. Everybody was constantly asking politicians, why don't you do something about wealth taxes? Why don't you do something about inequality? And there was kind of an effort made by the media, especially by the right-wing media, to kind of discredit the ideas on wealth taxes. And really, to be honest, it kind of failed. I think they didn't really successfully poke many holes in the idea of taxing the rich more, in the idea of doing something about inequality. And it felt like we had won the argument. But then what basically happened was the media pretty much stopped talking about inequality and started to talk more and more and more and more about refugees and asylum seekers and these protests at these hotels. And what this teaches us is the importance of the first media idea we're going to explain today, which is salience. Okay, so what is salience? I'm going to explain what salience is by telling a story about when I first started talking about economics in the media. So I started this YouTube channel in 2020, and at the time I started to do quite a little bit of like radio, talking about inequality, talking about the economy. I was lucky because I was one of the first guys who realized there was going to be a big inequality crisis, that there was going to be a big inflation crisis. So I started to tell everybody about it, and I went on loads and loads of radio shows. If you look back through this channel, through like the really, really, really early videos, we used to upload all of my radio interviews. So you'll see them on there, and you'll see I was basically saying like years in advance, we were going to have an inequality crisis and we were going to have an inflation crisis. And I was in a really strong position basically because I was a very good economist. I had a very good history. I was one of the top traders in the city, and economists who are this good basically don't normally appear in the media because they get paid a lot more to work for banks. So in my personal opinion, I was kind of head and shoulders above the competition talking about the economy. I went on loads of shows. I spoke about the economy. I was doing really well. And eventually I got invited to go on with Nick Ferrari, who is the most right-wing presenter on LBC. So again, for our foreign viewers, LBC is like a really popular talk radio show in this country. People call in, they talk about the politics, mainly politics, the economy, social issues. And they like to consider themselves like neither left nor right. They have like more left-wing presenters like James O'Brien, and they have more right-wing presenters like Nick Ferrari. And Nick Ferrari is considered the most right-wing one. And I got called up late one evening. I was playing football with my friends, and they wanted me to come on and talk about what I thought was the economy, basically. And I broke my rib playing football, but I really wanted to do it because Nick Ferrari is like their big presenter. So I barely slept, and I went on early in the morning on Nick Ferrari. And I wanted to talk about the economy. I wanted to talk about inequality. I wanted to talk about how COVID was massively increasing inequality, how it was going to cause an economic crisis. And what Nick Ferrari did was, he didn't allow the conversation to ever be about anything except for extremely narrow consumption decisions about what kind of energy provider an ordinary family uses. And every time I tried to move it to something bigger about the economy, about inequality, he was like, what energy provider should our viewers use? Again and again and again. And that is an example of salience, because salience is not about winning the argument, it is about controlling what topics are discussed. It's about controlling the topic of discussion. And once you start thinking about salience, so my background is not in media. My background is in maths and economics and trading. And in my heart of hearts, I'm like a very sort of logic-y, mathsy guy. And I think a lot of people like that, they think that political debate is about debate and about winning the argument. I make my points, you make your point, and the public will decide who's the winner.
That's the way it's supposed to be, by the way.
Yeah.
You make your points, I make my points, and we argue the points that we have. and people make their minds.
Sure. Yeah.
But that's not what is happening.
No.
Okay.
But what this Nick Ferrari interview showed me is a massive thing that you can do is to make sure you basically understand what is it that my opponent is good at. What area is he good at? What area is he weak at? What area am I good at? What area am I weak at? And you make sure that you only ever speak about the area that you are strong at, and you don't allow the subject to be anything that your opponent might be good at. That is controlling the salience. Salience is basically how visible a particular topic is. So rather than try to win the debate, you try to make sure only one side of the debate is visible, has any volume, gets heard, and that is the side of the debate upon which you are strong. And this idea of salience in a debate or in a conversation, which if you keep an eye out for it, you will see all over the media. You will see everybody doing it in every political conversation. It doesn't just apply to an individual conversation or an individual debate. We can apply it to the media as a whole. One media show, or basically like the whole media, like all of the TV, all of the newspapers, all of the online, social media. What topics are getting discussed and what topics are not getting discussed? And back when I came back from holiday in late June, early July, the economy and inequality and taxation of the rich were being discussed every single day on every single news show. We had massive salience. We were the issue that was being spoken about. We were the issue that was dominating media time. And now, if you look at the TV, what you see is immigration and asylum seekers and refugee riots, refugee protests outside hotels are being spoken about much, much, much more. And issues of inequality, taxation, distribution have kind of been put on the shelf, which basically means we, as much as we maybe won the argument on the economy, we are now losing the battle for salience. So how do you win the battle for salience? And that brings us to my next important point, which we're going to discuss about the media, which is storytelling. Okay, so storytelling. Now, if you have been watching for a long time, you'll know this, or if you go back and watch some of our older videos, I have been saying for years that in this country, what would happen was Rishi Sunak would fail really badly for popularity. Keir Starmer and Labour would have a massive electoral win. Then Keir Starmer and Labour would fail really badly. And then Nigel Farage and Reform would win. I've been saying this for years.
And the reason for them failing is that they don't address the issue. You know what I mean?
Sure. Yeah.
Because addressing the issue is that, oh yeah, we have to do something about these billionaires and their wealth. We have to bring the money that has been taken away and gathered and hoarded. So we have to bring it back to the system. Otherwise, there is no fucking magical solution to fix this system.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, immigrants. Oh no, we're gonna cut the tax on workers. Like that, it's not gonna solve the problem. It's gonna just create more gap in the budget or debt of the government. Because debt of the government is the debt that kind of people have. It's like when the system is in debt, you're in debt. Because there's money goes around in this fucking system. So it doesn't matter if they just print money and give it to you. It's like you loan in the money that you have to pay back.
Sure.
And these fucking billionaires just gathering the money. Like until some party or some politician or politic, some type of movement addressing the issue and do something about it, we're going to have this bullshit. We're going to have this storytellers come get the power, like what Trump did. America first, egg prices, build that wall, drill, baby, drill. It's like create this fantasy of like, yeah, this is going to be solved. I'm going to end the war in one day. Bullshit like that. And
yeah.
I'm not just talking about Trump. Before that,
of course,
Joe Biden. It's like it's the same fucking shit until we're gonna have one politician or one movement that just addresses, billionaires. Oh, we cannot have billionaires. Like, let's fucking be unite on that, so they don't fucking run to another tax paradise or whatever. Let's be unite on that, all the Western countries. And if they fucking move to another country, we're gonna tax them anyway. All the purchases that comes from this country will be taxed triple. Because you fucking keep your wealth. It's a crime. It should be a fucking crime.
Yeah.
It should be fucking crime. It's crime against humanity, man. It's the biggest, the most horrible crime that you can commit.
Yeah.
It's more than murder. It's the worst thing you can do.
It's parasitism, isn't it? Being parasites sucking our energy big time in the form of money. But okay, I'm going to be devil's advocate here now, dude. I mean, I hear everything you say, and I would love that everyone went into uproar and did something and changed the system, and maybe that will happen. I kind of got a feeling that the whole system has to collapse before we'll make any decent progress. Because you think now, okay, Trump goes his way, and I'm just using America as an example because it's so extreme there. Okay, and some new president comes in that says, look, guys, we're not going to have this anymore. We're going to have wealth tax. The trillionaires, they can do whatever. That it will end up evening things out. Well, how long do you think he's going to last? He'll get popped off in 5 minutes. And I don't know if it's happened before, but I guarantee you, this won't happen. I mean, these guys have got the control now. So how are you going to topple them? Seriously.
No, the problem
Remember,
is that,
I'm being devil's advocate.
No.
Yeah.
You actually pointed out a really good argument here. How we're going to defeat the influence that they have in politicians. Like, let's say you find a random politician comes up and lead in this movement to win over tax wealth. Who's to say the next administration, they just get everything back and overturn everything that he did or she did?
Yeah.
In the last term.
Or that politician gets some mysterious illness and carks it after a few weeks.
Whacked.
Yeah. Falls out of an airplane.
All true, but I think it's about people. It's about public mind that if they see the changes, if they recognize and realize and see the living proof of it, then it's not going to just go back like that. That's the most important paradigm shift that needs to happen.
Oh, sure.
Because, if the government comes and say like, oh no, it's immigrants, it's like, fuck you. We had 4 years of great living, working condition was better. Like, we were moving towards 4 days a week, 6 hours a day work weeks, and we could afford anything. The groceries prices were lower. We had the healthcare and shit free. So if you live that, then it's not some fantasy that they can promise you. You lived it. That's the way to go about it, and that is not gonna shift by. Like they need to work so fucking hard, and it's not gonna take another 4 years. It's hard to bring it back.
Yes,
but when it never happened, especially in USA, it's really hard to make that happening. And I think we need to find hope somewhere.
Oh, sure, yeah.
And that's the
please,
start. That's this thing that we talk about, like a wealth tax. It's just the start.
Yes.
Moving towards the direction that we create equality for people, equal chances, opportunities, equal upbringing, equal education. We changed our education system. We don't think about how we can create more corporation wealth, and we invest on human resource instead. You know what I mean? It can shift our focus from fucking making billionaires trillionaires to making human being
absolutely
fulfill their mission on this planet.
Bravo.
Finding their life purpose and like blooming their God-given, for the lack of better term, skills and shit.
Yes. To me, that absolutely right behind what you say, but that to me involves a collective mind shift around the entire planet. And I want to say that's happening. I mean, what you just described is really what I work with, as you know, in my work. And it's happening. And we're not alone. We're just a little tiny group. But there are thousands of groups and millions of like-minded people. So I feel strongly that what you're saying is just a question of time before it does happen. But it might be a while.
No, I don't think so. I think people are waking up to the fact that, oh, this is bullshit. This is like a theater show. Like all these immigrants, make America great again, fuck, America first. They wake up to the fact like, okay, you say all that to don't tax the billionaires. It's like you hide the billionaires behind you. Like, no, there, right there, immigrants.
That point, what he calls salience, which is a new word for me, but I understand the concept well. I think if our followers just even grasp that as one point, that's a big shift too. Just say, okay, you know, if, like you said, if they start blabbing on about immigration where they have been talking about a wealth tax or inequality, okay, what's the camouflage? What are they covering up? That's a big move already there, a big shift in consciousness.
I think it's happening. What I'm trying to say, people are waking up to that fact.
Yeah, good.
And
I'm happy for that.
Yeah, and I'm glad we're not alone in this. Like we're not, and we should never, any of you should never feel like your voice doesn't matter.
No.
Like all this a small voice, quiet voice. Together we're gonna have the power, we're gonna have the volume that we want, we're gonna have the impact that we want. We just have to like have the perspective. Like, oh, it's us. If we all gather together and understand what is happening and what are the causes of this screwed up society that we live in, then we can fucking change it. Then we can pick a leader that lead this movement to change this bullshit structure that they create for us by their lies, by their salience, by their storytelling, by their lies. It's like manipulations.
Yeah.
All right, let's see what he has to say.
Sure.
I said this is right back when Boris Johnson was still Prime Minister and Rishi Sunak was coming in. So I've made a lot of very good, correct predictions on politics, which were not consensus at the time. And the way I've been able to make these correct predictions is simply through understanding two things, which is the economy and storytelling. Okay, so it wasn't particularly difficult to predict the failure of successive UK governments if you understand our basic economic problem, which is we have a rapidly growing inequality of wealth that is sucking wealth out of the middle class and the government, which is sucking spending power out of the economy. It's accumulating wealth with the very rich, which is driving asset prices up, which is making it harder for ordinary people to live. Because we knew that both Rishi Sunak and the Conservatives and Keir Starmer and Labour would come in and do nothing about this growing inequality, we basically knew that they would fail economically. It's like you've got a hole in the bottom of your boat. Wealth is sucking out of that hole at an unbelievably rapid, accelerating pace. If you don't patch that hole, you're going to fail. So it was relatively easy to know that we would have a sequence of failing governments. But how was I able also to predict the rise of Reform and the rise of Nigel Farage, who, for those of you who might not know, who are not from the UK, are our sort of new far-right party and leader? That was because I understood the importance of storytelling. So when you have an economic crisis, especially what we have had in the last 5, 10, sort of coming up to 20 years now, a long-term economic crisis, which seems protracted, feels like it has no end, feels like it's going to get worse and worse, ordinary families are really struggling, you create this urgent need in the mind of the public for something new, something different, right? People do not want people can have a sense for like the direction that their country is headed and the direction that living standards are headed. And if you go to a place like India or like China, where living standards have for a long time been worse than they are in the UK, because people have a sense that life is getting better and their kids will be richer than they are, they're happy to accept that. But when people sense that their life is getting worse, people really worry, and people don't consider that to be acceptable, and they want something different. And what people think they want is like a new economic model or a new way of dealing with the economy that doesn't collapse. But the truth is, or maybe they want a new political system, but the truth is, most people are not experts on the economy and politics. And what people really want is a new story. People want there to be a new story that does not involve their kids being poor, that does not involve them getting worse and worse off over time. And it creates this massive demand for basically a new story. There's this quote that I use from Milton Friedman, the American economist, which is, at times of crisis, the solution will be chosen from the ideas lying around at the time. If you have a collapsing economy, it creates what I think of as a kind of economic boom for stories and ideas, which is when people are extremely unsatisfied with the status quo, they start to look around and think, well, what are our other options? And that meant that because we knew we would have a sequence of failing governments, because the governments wouldn't deal with growing wealth inequality, anybody who could put together a compelling story that was different, that was new, would inevitably get drawn into power. And what really matters with regards to these stories is, again, the salience. So when the economy is collapsing, lots of different people will have lots of different ideas about how do we fix the economy. And basically, whichever one is loudest is going to be the guy that will win. When you understand this basic idea, number one, until we deal with growing inequality, living standards continue to worsen, which means we have this continuing sense of collapsing economy and desperate need for change. You kind of always know what's going to happen in politics, which is whoever is the loudest alternative voice at any point in time is going to win the next election. And Labour won the last election with a very, very simple story of the Conservatives are really shit, let's kick them out. And that basically won. And that was the dominant story at the time. But then Labour...
That's always true.
...come in and you get this even deeper kind of story power vacuum, essentially, which is...
Here's the thing, that this salience or the narrative that they want to push, it's not necessarily needs to be a lie.
Oh.
It's just not addressing the issue.
Yeah. It's an avoidance.
It's like
or cover
diagnosing someone with a different disease that had similar, signs that you figure out, but not diagnosing the real condition they have. And say like, oh, you have puffy eyes and like, sore throat. Oh, maybe your blood sugar, you have a high blood sugar. And it's like, what about, that might be like a reason for it, but can I just, it might be just I got a cold or something, You know what I mean? It's like so, like diagnosing the problem so wrong that doesn't change anything. And then people, and I think it's by design. I don't think like people really believe in it. I don't think they're stupid. I don't think these people who are in power are that dumb. I honestly hope so. They know what's up. They know they have to tax these fucking billionaires.
Of course.
To bring like some equality to the society.
But don't forget, they don't have the power to change that. They'll come in and get or whatever happens to them, I don't know, thrown out or disappear or whatever drastic.
Or
Hey.
they just get the money.
All the money, yeah, there you go.
Act
It's more
as a
likely.
puppet.
Yeah, there you go. That's probably most likely. Yeah.
In this country, we've only had two political parties in power for nearly 100 years, essentially. And one of them was massively discredited. Then the other one comes in, basically purely on the story of we are not the first party, and they become massively discredited. And really, we end up in a situation of whoever can control the media salience, whoever has the biggest story of being new and different, will become prime minister. And if you look at the situation now, it was always pretty clear that Nigel Farage and Reform and the far right would win. And I want to be clear when I say that, this is not all UK specific. The same thing is happening in basically every country in the entire Western world. When your centre left has no story and your centre right has no story, really anyone else who has a compelling story can basically walk into your president's or prime minister's office. So that is where we are basically. We have this collapsing economy. We have this vacuum of stories. And it becomes, in a bizarre way, like fantastically easy to become president or prime minister. And that is why you're seeing across the world sort of random guys who are not even politicians, were not even political parties which didn't even exist recently,
It means Trump.
suddenly turning up, becoming president, becoming prime minister. You know, you saw Macron in France, we saw Trump in the US, we've seen the collapse of, we've seen the rise of the far right parties basically across Europe, new political parties taking power in Italy. When the economy is collapsing, anyone who can tell a compelling story will be able to take control of that country. And the problem with that at the moment is, really, if you look around the political world, at the moment, there are basically no loud stories other than the far right. So the far right has like a pretty clear story that everybody knows. Like if I were to pull someone in my country and say, what do you think Nigel Farage or Reform stand for? What do they believe? If I did the same thing in your country, wherever you were, people would know. They say they want there to be lower immigration. They want there to be fewer asylum seekers. That's what they want. It's really, really clear. But if I was to ask somebody, what is the story of Labour or Keir Starmer in this country? If I was to ask somebody, what is the story of the Democrats in your country? I don't think they would know, and there are groups of politicians in society. I went on The Rest is Politics a few weeks ago, which is the biggest politics podcast here in the UK. If you want to see it, there are the videos there online. And it's a very high profile podcast, and it's two sort of centrist politicians. One is from the centre left party, one is from the centre right. They're neither of them active in politics anymore. You go on there's a lot of hand-wringing about the failures of Labour, the failures of the Conservative Party, the failures of the far right, Reform and Nigel Farage. And for all that they like to criticise the existing political system, what is their story? What is their story? I mean, I think it seems to be largely about criticising other groups. So that's where we are. If we talk about the left, if I was to bring someone in on the street and say, what do you think, the left believes in this country? What is their story? Differentiate a little between the centre and the centre left and the left. The centre right, the Conservatives are basically dead. Really what you have is, you only have one group that has a story. And people get behind that story, they support that story. In the absence of competing stories, basically you win. So we have this period of time where there's this massive absence of stories, which creates this unbelievable power of storytelling. And yet seemingly no group in society, other than the far right, has been able or is able to tell a compelling political economic story. So now we've established these two really important concepts that you need to understand if you want to take political power: salience and storytelling. I want to talk about another element which the far right and the refugee protesters have done really well in understanding these concepts. So one of these protests, which they're very regular now, is super, super close to where I live. And I went down there with Jack, the cameraman, who films these videos a few weeks ago. To be honest, more than anything, just to sort of witness what was happening, because I was worried, I am worried about this sort of growing movement. And one thing that I found really, really interesting that I saw there was there were enormous, the actual number of protesters. So there were protesters protesting against hotels, and there were counter-protesters protesting against the protesters. The number of protesters was not that huge, but what there were a huge number of was citizen journalists. And what I mean when I say citizen journalist is somebody who's not presumably a professional journalist, just a guy or a woman with a camera, sort of live streaming, doing selfies, showing the protest and uploading the video to Facebook. And there were loads and loads and loads of these guys. And it was really, really noticeable how much media presence there was relative to what was actually a relatively small protest. And I think what that shows is basically that the far right has done a much better job, in a sense, of understanding storytelling and salience, and also understanding a thing which I've spoken about a lot on this channel, which is the need to be present online. So I think a thing has happened in media, especially politics media, in the last few years, which is there has been a massive shift towards online media. I think this was really accelerated during COVID, which is more and more people want to get their news online, on Instagram, on YouTube, on Facebook. And it has created this real opportunity to aggressively dominate the salience of online platforms, because the existing media institutions like BBC, Sky News, the existing political parties have just been slow to move into it. And what is interesting about these citizen journalists is these citizen journalists individually, the vast majority of them, won't get anything like the number of views that we get on this video, that we get on our channel. But the way that they succeed is that there is simply an enormous amount of them. And I think what this shows is, in a weird way, it's kind of inspirational, because I've been saying for a long time, I made the decision, rather than writing for the big newspapers, to try to do a push for online and a push for social, because I felt that that's where people were. And recently, I've been trying to encourage our viewers, you, to create more yourself and to make more videos yourself and throw things out there. And that is basically because people are online nowadays, and there's this massive space. I think what you see is stories. Stories are these really interesting things. Stories are kind of like, they're like a computer virus in a way. Like, we like to think that the media comes in and decides what stories get placed where. But as the media has lost power and people have moved online, you're kind of seeing it's more like a virus model, almost like this COVID model, which is, if enough people get out there and spread it, it can spread really, really quickly. And you can dominate the salience of a subject without necessarily having that top level media support. And I think that is what the far right have done super, 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 super well. And they've created this kind of, obviously, they do have media support. They do have financial support. We have things like GB News in this country, which is, a very well-funded, loss-making media channel that supports these far-right ideas. You have, obviously, people like Elon Musk buying things like Twitter. But they have really effectively spread these messages from the ground up, from the bottom. And I think, really, we need to learn a lesson from these guys, which is, I think people like me, I need to be constantly making these ideas, these messages, the idea that the problem is inequality, the idea that living standards will get worse because of growing inequality. I need to make that as simple as possible, again and again and again, so that people like you can take the message and run with it.
Yes.
There you go.
And if you want to watch the full video, you can just click on the link in the description. Definitely watch it. And that's the thing that I was listening and watching this video like 5-6 times yesterday. Just like, it wasn't like hard to grasp, but
Yeah.
I was just thinking, like, while I was listening, I was like, it's so fucking simple. And it feels like no one in, like, how do you say, legacy media, they don't want to touch this subject. And if they do, they just like quickly, like, it's like such a hot topic that they're like, oh yeah, and the billionaires, what if they go away? What if they just move out? That's how they address this issue in the media. It's like, if you want to tax them, they're just gonna move out. It's like, All right, then we fucking find another way to, even if they move out, they need to pay for it. Like you don't want to address it's like you have a tumor in your head and you just pick up your eyebrows to fix your health condition.
Fix the tumor.
Yeah, it's like if I look better, then I'm gonna feel better eventually.
I might die, but
I'm gonna die
sure.
looking good. That's what is happening. And I think one thing that I can tell people, if you're a content creator yourself, take this and make your own content out of it. And if you're just listening and want to know what is happening, this is what's happening. This is what's up.
Yeah.
And you need to like share this with people that you know, or like be aware of it. The awareness. We need people to be informed. That's all. We need to know what is happening to us, to our economy, to our living condition. Most of all, most important out of everything.
Sure.
And what is the cause of it? And don't get fucking manipulated and like bullshitted by these narratives. I'm an immigrant. You're an immigrant. We're contributing to this society.
This is a worldwide situation too. I want to say that it's not exclusive to any country that I know of right now. So a worldwide situation.
So do you have any closing statement, my fellow immigrants?
I just want to support what you said, Marnie. The more awareness there is of the situation, I mean, I think everyone is aware of it, but the more consciousness there is of it, the faster things will move. But I think we have to remember it's a planetary thing. It's not just one country. But we all play our part.
I think what I'm trying to do, it has nothing to do with location or geographic.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying too.
Within you, if you change it, doesn't matter where you live, what country, what government is in power, whatever. They don't address the issue. That is like there are like a small group of rich people taking all the wealth and assets, and you're struggling. So until you recognize and realize and have the awareness and understanding, you cannot even begin to start any resistance or start any planning to change it. So
start here.
Start here and here within you, recognize. And then one more thing that is very important is to, when you start caring about your fellow human being or your neighbors or your, I don't know, people that you know and people that you don't know, if you recognize that until you care, there wouldn't be any solution.
Absolutely.
When you start caring, the solution will come up for all the problems that seem unsolvable.
That to me, here's my closing thing. It's the old thing I've mentioned so many times. If something creates division, it's not what we need. If it creates unity, that's our new way of being. And that's what you're describing.
And that's the thing that they're afraid to death of.
Of course.
United people.
Oh, absolutely. And the whole cosmos is moving in this way too. So, I mean, the world is with us. It's not something we really have to fight too hard against. It's just making it conscious.
Change is coming.
It's coming, absolutely. No question.
Let's end on that.
Let's end on that. Thank you, Marnie.
Thank you so much. Thank you guys for watching. Check Gary Stevenson YouTube channel and comment if you have any opinion on our channel, on our video. And share this with your friends. Spread the message. Thank you so much.